Okay, welcome back, everybody. I'm here this morning with Rahul Alim, the president and CEO of Custom Creative's digital marketing agency and the founder of GSD Coaching Program, where they help digital marketers grow and scale their business. It's an honor to have Rahul with me. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Rahul has spent so much time in the marketing and the advertising world and has such a huge amount of experience in that space. I really wanted to get him in and make sure we pick his brain about how he got to where he is today. The reason I mentioned that is you mentioned dropping out of college, doing an internship. You got to work with some awesome people that you still keep in touch with today. I guess my first question, I'd like to know, how did this get started for you? Because again, you've been in the marketing and the advertising space for a long time. What I'd really like to know is, where did this start? Where did your interest first peak in this field of work?
Yeah, 100% all by mistake. Because like when I dropped out of school, I had no clue what in the world I was going to do. In fact, when I was not going back to school, I remember vividly, I was living at home. My parents asked me, when does school start? And it was about 4 months of a holiday for me from Christmas break. And I'm like, school started like 4 months ago, Mom. I don't go there anymore. So that's how the dropout happened. So then disappointment came across everything because all I did was go work out, slept a lot, didn't do a lot. There was probably not a lot my parents thought I was going to do well when they saw that me. But I knew inside of me, like I was working out 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I wanted to be an athlete. Never worked out. Anyways, long story short, I came across this internship actually coincidentally at the gym when I was working out, training to try to be pro at something. Um, the girl next to me, I went to high school with her little brother, and I told her what I was up to, which was pretty much nothing. So I probably embellished it back then. And she's like, well, you should talk to my boyfriend. He is the vice president of marketing at this sports agency, and kind of described it slightly. And I'm like, sports agency, love both of them. Let's do this. Got the job before I even got there. Didn't know that. Wore a 3-piece suit to the interview. They were a very casual crew over there. Anyway, so that's how I got started in business. Then after the internship, I worked there 6 months, 40 hours per week. $0 was my salary. I valued learning over the money because I wasn't struggling where I couldn't find my next meal. I had a little bit of pocket change saved up. So I totally valued that over the currency, because I knew if I would have got paid, I would have probably been limited by hours. And I would have probably also had a much shorter time working for them and not able to kind of earn their respect, but also earn their time and want them wanting to pay me. Because I just saw, if they pay me and I don't have as much value, they're just going to cut my hours and cut the time I have for an internship, because you're only supposed to work 5 hours a week and maybe 2 to 3 months. But with my energy and making their lives easier, I knew I had some value, even if it meant go pick up their laundry or their dry
Yeah.
cleaning or get their car washed, and just make sure they're more efficient. So I just found areas that I can help, and then it just turned into more and more. So they gave me a lot more time. So that was my first earning of like learning business outside of just my family. Then from there, worked at realtor.com. Realtor.com opened my eyes up to this online game, where we had to sell internet marketing to real estate agents, which is one of the hardest things to do at the time, probably still is to this day. So we just had to call people over the phone, show them that you can put houses on the internet and it will sell faster for a higher price if you do it with our system. So then that opened my eyes up. So once I was there, never got a raise that I wanted to. Didn't want a huge raise. I just was doing pretty well once I was working there, and they wouldn't give me the number one book in the entire company, even though I was promised that. So that was kind of my tipping point where I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm out. And then they asked me to stay longer. They asked me to hit my annual quota before I quit. So by October, I hit that number for my 12-month quota. And then I just said, all right, peace out, guys. I'm out. So I left in really good graces. And that's when Custom Creatives was born. That's how I started this digital marketing thing, where I was just like, all right, well, I can sell products to these real estate agents, because we were selling product to them at realtor.com, but they weren't using it at the top of their capabilities. They were buying it because they knew they needed it, but then they weren't utilizing it. So I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just sell them a service where I teach them how to use what they already bought so they can make their lives easier, almost like a virtual assistant, if you will.
Yeah.
That was a terrible idea because we didn't know what to charge. And we at some point we're like, fuck, we were thinking, all right, we know the product so well, we're going to just spend about 15, 20 minutes per person per year. We'll just charge them $50 a month because we have no fucking clue what we're doing. Then we're like, all right, well, we want more cash flow than a $50 check. So we're like, all right, let's do 600 for the year and give them 2 months off. People started jumping at that. And then some people were just spending a lot of our time, some people none of our time. And we're like, you know what, this isn't something we want to do in a year from now.
Yeah.
And then one day we just got a magical call from a referral, and they just said, hey, can you design these ads for us? And then it turned into write the copy for the ads. Then it turned into, when you click this thing, where is it going to go? So we designed like what we call the funnel today, right? It was a landing page. We just
Yeah.
kept it simple as a landing page. Now it's a funnel where they click it, it goes to the page. We made it very limited, where all we wanted was name, email, phone number, and a little bit of criteria. And then on the next page, we would tell them the thank you message, like what's going to happen next. Here's my phone number that I'm going to text you from. Here's the phone number to save in your phone, so when I call, don't ghost it. So we were being like articulate, step 1, step 2, step 3 before you go. There was more attention on the internet back then, because there's not so much, like today, there's so much distractions. A lot of people fill something in and they totally forgot 3 seconds later.
Yeah.
So we had a little bit more attention to capitalize off of. So that's what I started doing. That's how I got into the digital planet. And then it just evolved from there, just doing display advertisements. We started partnering with huge companies like Realtor.com. They wouldn't give me the raise while I was there, but then they gave me a massive raise when
Yeah.
I became their contractor,
I
their
bet.
official vendor for their marketing department. Yeah. So it was kind of like a cool story to kind of quit an employer, then get hired as a third party. So that's really kind of the ground story. And the reason I kind of went a little bit longer on that, and not try to bore the audience, whoever's going to watch this, is just the fact that if you think a little bit bigger and you take your same product to a different scale, you can get whatever it is you want. Because when I got Realtor.com as a client, there was only one employee, and it was me. I had broken up with a partner previous to that. I had a girlfriend at the time that was working sort of for me, but really not. College, she was in college still.
Yeah.
And I was really just me, and I didn't know what to do. When I actually went into the room and closed them, I had to hire some dude who had interned for me several years prior, who was like 16, 17 years old at the time. And then he had turned 18 and he had moved away, and he was folding clothes for Abercrombie and Fitch. And I said, you do not work there. I don't give a shit if you put a notice in. You're going to work for me. And that was like, that conversation happened at like 10 p.m. By like midnight, he was at my house sleeping over, ready to work the next day. So that's kind of how the show started. Yeah. And then we turned into like like we never looked back from 7 figures a year ever since.
Oh my gosh. It's crazy at first glance, right? Because a lot of us listening have not reached that level of success. But there's principles in what you talked about just now that I kind of want to highlight. And I'd love to know your thoughts on it too. And tell me if I'm capturing them correctly. Like the first one that just glaringly stands out to me is that regardless of where you were, you worked really, really, really hard. I hear this whole like, work smarter, not harder. But I think that's a false cliche. I think like the combination of the two is where you find true success, right?
Well, yeah, because you have to fail so many times because you don't know what you're doing. And then you don't, I mean, today you have to listen to people on social media. I work 4 hours a day. I have 50 million VAs. Fuck all
Yeah.
that. I work 24 fucking 7, and I loved every minute of it. If I can go back in time, there's things I would have certainly done differently, because hindsight makes you a little bit wiser, but I wouldn't have changed the work ethic. I would have still worked all the time. I would have still slept for like 5 years in my office 3 to 4 times a week. I would have
Yeah.
still done the high intensity work ethic. And that's just who I am. Like, I don't think of burnout, and I don't think of work as work. I think of business as a game that I'm going to master. There's
Yeah.
always a new level. And I'm not looking at it waking up every single morning and saying, poor me, I started my own company and this fucking sucks. I'm the one that creates the rules. I'm the one that created this game. It's my business. I choose however I want to run it. So I'm going to run it my way, but I'm also going to listen to the people above me. At
Yeah.
first, I didn't listen to shit. I didn't listen to anybody who was smarter. I was always fucking right. My ego got so in front of me. But then after just kind of getting like worn down of like doing the same thing, not getting a new result, all I had to do was apply simple tweaks and pivots based on what had already been told by way bigger people. Because I mean, I was lucky enough to like spend some money on mentorship, And I
Yeah.
was also, I would surround myself with the right people. Like I've had like the founder of stamps.com who raised like hundreds of millions of dollars to launch that company, helping me. The CEO of Welcome Wagon, I got on some phone calls with. I met like even the CEO, former CEO of Sony Home Entertainment Group, who ran a $3 billion division of the company. So I had like really good people that were people you don't Google. It's just
Yeah.
people you run into in a network when you're in the right environment. And once you capture their attention, you just fucking listen and apply as much as you can.
You ran into all these people. How did you do that? You said you mentioned like you run into them via like the network that you're building and like being in the right places. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, because my family is also a bunch of entrepreneurs, mom, dad, sister, the whole thing. My exact,
Oh
we're
wow.
four, family of four, all of us have our own businesses.
Dang.
And we would collaborate our networking. So like if somebody needed PR copy, go to my sister. Somebody needed like advisory for placement for CEO level and whatnot, you go to my dad. If it was like property management or whatever, you go to my mom and purchasing stuff. When it came to marketing, you came to a guy like me. So we kind of had our own little network within the family
Dang.
itself.
You guys are like a
Um,
powerhouse of networking in your
yeah,
family.
it was lucky. I mean, my sister and my dad are like such gifted communicators. I'm more of like, I don't like, I'm a little bit more boring. They're really gifted. So
We'll have
so
to
I
have
give
them
them
on the
the
show
credit, all
too
the
then.
credit in the world. They can turn business from a like at a wedding, they're just like very sociable. Like at a wedding, I sometimes steer the conversation just to work, and I can bore the heck out of people. So anyways, long story short, yeah, it came a lot from get once I got introduced like through family. It would be my job to capture their attention and their intrigue, to want to mature the conversation, to want to be excited when I made the calls to them or meet up for coffee. And then I just asked like crazy. I just kept asking. And my give was like, I will buy you lunch. I'll buy you coffee. Can you bring your wife? Can we make some fun out of this while we do some business mentorship?
Yeah.
Because they didn't always know what I wanted. Like I would talk, like even like Jim Cathcart, he's like one of the best sales people who's been the National Association speaker or president of the Speaker Association. Met him at an event he was speaking at. I just tapped him on the shoulder and I just said, hey, what you just said was absolutely fantastic. I've never seen it positioned in that way. He just was captivated by my compliment, and we became friends ever since, where we go to lunch, we go to breakfast, we exchange emails. So like he's
Wow.
one of the greatest like communicators and one of the greatest salespeople I've ever met in my life. And there's a lot of great authors and a lot of great salespeople. And I'd put him at one of the top 10 in the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about that network. That's where I got a lot of of access to really high caliber people way ahead of the game.
Mm.
And that's kind of what helped me early on. And now it's just to a new level. Like once you get to a level, there's a new devil that peeks its ugly head, right? So you have to
Mm-hmm.
conquer that. So when you're first starting out and maybe picking a niche, coming down with your offer and basically your foundation of your business, a lot of people don't fix that and stare that in the mirror. They focus on like, I want the laptop lifestyle, I want the Bali. Like they have their endpoint of what they want, but then they don't
Yeah.
reverse engineer it back down to what will precisely get me there. Because I'll tell you this, if you have an offer, expect it not to work, expect it to fucking fail, and then be like conscious enough where you can actually pivot it. Because when I had offers, like it worked, I hated it. So I had to pivot it, but I could have still been a virtual assistant at way back then before VAs were even a acronym and a common language here
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
But I had to pivot, and then I got into something that sparked my interest, and then my brain was thinking, can you do this in several years from now and still like this game? Now, there's nuances of how I was able to get myself out of some of the dirty work. Like I couldn't run a business and write every piece of copy when we got to scale,
Oh
because
no.
we were sometimes getting 100 brand new orders every single day. And that's a pretty big amount of volume to work with, because you have to have a human conversation, you have to process the order. We essentially departmentalized and created like a Henry Ford power plant of how
Yeah.
we operate our
Assembly
business.
line down the
A
yeah, that's
complete
oh
assembly
my
line. Yeah,
gosh.
we took a complex service, plugged in like people who had no idea what we even did, and were able to make them really good at just the one piece that they needed to be good at.
Yeah.
So we were forced into when I say we, it's more like and then I got the team, was forced into mastering SOPs because
Hmm.
I was the kind of guy that everything was right here. I will do everything precise. I'll do everything in my mind. I thought I was doing everything perfect. And when I'd see other people try to operate, I'd be like, bro, like that was the dumbest shit I've ever fucking seen. Like follow the way I do it. But they couldn't follow along because it wasn't like they were listening to every one of my calls. And also, I have to be fair. I'm the entrepreneur where I have passion for this. They're the
Yeah.
employee where they may not. So I had to really precisely write the SOPs out.
Yeah.
Once we had SOPs documented, training became so fucking easy because all we did was print a booklet, and the booklet rarely ever changed because it was so simple. And
Hmm.
then we just walk people through it. They'd go practice on old clients. Once they practice, then we would ultimately put them into like real world environments.
Yeah. Well,
Businesses being able to knowledge transfer.
yeah. Sorry, you froze up there for a second. I was going to ask you, you jumped into something that I was totally going to come back to, and it's perfect. I noticed that you've talked a lot about pivoting, adapting to the needs that you're identifying, right? I imagine that happens a lot in your conversations and associations with these high caliber people that you got connected with, right? And as a side note, Rahul got, it sounds like you got largely connected with these people because you mentioned like collaborative networking, right? And that just so happened to be your family members who had this awesome network. But I would also say, because obviously that's kind of a rare circumstance to have. It's amazing. It's an awesome thing. But I almost guarantee everybody who's looking to expand their network just needs to do collaborative networking with the people that they already know, right? They need to start connecting and reaching out to people that they know and just take a chance and it'll happen, right? I mean, because people are willing to connect you with other people and that's how it starts.
Yeah, and you just have to be conscious of how you ask for an introduction because you don't want to be all about yourself. You don't want to be totally all about your ego and whatnot.
Mm.
And then people will be more like adaptive to want to help you.
Well,
I
and
mean,
you
because
you
if you
highlighted
can
that.
provide value, what's that?
I was going to say you highlighted that
Jim Cathcart, yeah.
with Jim Cathcart. You started off by complimenting him, right? It wasn't about you; it was about him. You heard, and it wasn't an empty compliment, right? You respect him, and what he said actually made an impact on you, and so you're like identified that, highlighted him, and then of course he was open to sharing and talking to you and connecting with you.
Yeah, and my intention was not actually to get him on a phone call or anything because I actually complimented him because it was authentic as hell because I actually liked it. And in
Yeah.
fact, the compliment was a little weird. I said your speech or your presentation was so good that I could tell people in the audience had to go to the bathroom, but they didn't want to miss what you were saying. So I kind of
That's
gave him a
actually a
weird
really
compliment.
that's not weird at all. That's actually a
Yeah,
really good one, man.
yeah,
Oh my
so I
gosh.
try to be also different than how I compliment people because it's so easy to say like, "Hey, that was excellent." He probably hears that all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So I attached it to bowel movement, right? So it's kind
Yeah.
of weird, but anyways,
Oh my
but
gosh.
after that event, like I googled him, found him on LinkedIn, dropped him a message, found his website, filled in his form, shot him a direct email, and then he responded, and I said, "Hey, would you be against hopping like me buying you a cup of coffee or perhaps lunch?" And he said, "Absolutely not. Anytime, anywhere." And I said, "Perfect."
Wow.
And then we set up
Wow.
a meeting. Ever since then, he's probably been on I've done Facebook Lives with him. We've done trainings with him, probably at least like a dozen times. And I've been to lunch and whatnot. We've become friends. So I'm friends with like, I think he's like 75 now. I mean, the dude feels like he's like 20, 25.
Yeah.
But that's how we create the network. And then it has a cascading effect because he's so well connected because he has big brands. Now, not to focus on just Jim, but how you guys can apply it or if this is even relevant.
Yeah.
Like, let's just say there's somebody that you're reading their book. Go wherever they spend their time. Google them and find them on social. If they're active on Facebook or on LinkedIn or Twitter, take a picture of you holding their book and tag them and give them a compliment and then say, "Hey, shot you a DM or a direct PM, whatever the appropriate vernacular is for that platform," and
Mhm.
then start a conversation because I've done that where it was like a dude that authored a best-selling book for Twitter. His last name was Evans. I think his first name may have been Dave. I totally forgot. But
Yeah.
it was just at Barnes and Noble one day, and I just smashed the picture button, sent him a tweet, said, "Hey, so cool. I'm reading your book on a Sunday." And then he responded right away, like literally in real fucking time on Twitter. We had an interactive conversation going back and forth. And then he it was such a great conversation that he said, reach out to me anytime you feel like. And like a dude like that probably charges $1,000 per phone call for guys like me when I
Yeah.
was coming up and growing. But that's kind of where you can get some sort of like persuasion skills, or at least the ability to just reach out to people, because like I don't really care. Like it can't hurt me if somebody doesn't have time for me. I respect that they're busy people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things I won't I don't know what quote it is. It could be a Wayne Gretzky thing. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Mm-hmm.
um so but just don't be a cold DM dick, because I get so many cold DMs with like fucking blocks of shit. I don't mind the cold DM, but don't
But
come out guns
yeah.
blazing asking for like nobody's here to serve your ass. Whoever's listening to this, you're here to serve them the best you can. Give them value, give them a compliment, give them something, and then you can start to lean into a conversation. If you're looking for like a self-righteous kind of expectation, have some value to provide, or give them a compliment or something like that, because you don't have to have a lot of money to do things. You just have to get resourceful. And my way early on was, let me just buy you coffee. And then I came up with some super creative ways to capture attention, where like even the likes of Jay Shetty have seen my gifts to them, and we started conversations.
Oh man. Sorry, I'm writing stuff down because this is gold, dude. I hope the people listening are taking notes, because the whole purpose of the podcast is to say, okay, everybody's at different places. Some people are in the corporate world, some people are in the entrepreneurial world. But regardless of where you are in your starting point, there are certain principles that you can apply in order to be successful in the things that you do going forward, right? And some of the things that you're talking about, I mean, I love that you're tying it back to the experiences that you had and everything, because I think it's a very relatable story, right? Because a lot of us don't, a lot of the listeners don't have a big network exactly right now, or maybe feel like, I'm kind of a nobody right now. And frankly, maybe they are, right? Well, a nobody in the sense of like, people don't know their names, or they don't have a multi-million-dollar
Mhm.
business or something. But I love these experiences because, especially with the whole sincerity aspect, right? You talk about reaching out to people, you talk about reading their books and listening to what they say. I think I don't want to get too like mushy there, but I'm like, you are who you said you were, right? You actually were reading their book. You actually were
Mhm.
listening to their speech and internalizing it. And like, I think people can pick up on that. I mean, when people are sincere, you can feel it, right? And
Right.
when
And
and the opposite is true, right?
yeah, because you have to think a long game, because like a lot of people are all so desperate in the moment that they need. They come off as needy. You don't want to come off as needy, because you got to
Yeah.
think a couple years down the road. If I come off as desperate and it's all mission, I need money, you're going to attract so many people that don't want to do business with you. You're going to be really good at repelling people away from you. You have to
Yeah.
think a little bit of a longer game, in the sense of, in a couple years from now, will those people endorse you? Will those people tag you on Facebook? Will those people say, hey, Rahul's team can train your whole entire marketing organization in the coaching program, or Rahul's team can do your marketing done for you, drive leads, optimize your whole systems, so you can make more money. So like those are the things that I look at, is whenever I do start networking, people abundantly clear know that I own a marketing agency and I own a coaching business. The marketing agency helps businesses drive traffic and sales. The coaching business helps digital marketing agencies grow and scale from either 0 to 10 grand, from 10 grand to 100 grand a month. So it's all these different things that I do, but they're all in my core expertise. I
Yeah.
learned how to do something, and then I learned how to teach it really well. Now, when I teach it really well, people hire us. So it's like, I'm not going off and saying I'm a crypto expert, and I'm not going off and saying, hey, because I invest in real estate doesn't make me a fucking real estate expert. Like we see in today's world, somebody put a down payment, all of a sudden they have a masterclass on how to buy fucking houses. Like that's not me. That's not really my expertise. While I
Yeah.
do those things, I'm not ready to teach it. I need to keep my brand in alignment with what I like doing every single day. So I love doing these podcasts. In fact, I'll have a couple more that I'm going to be doing later throughout the day, so I can kind of help or shed some sort of like unlock button in people's minds where they can actually just go out and get what they want. Because like I talk about two stories, like Dwayne Wade and Kobe Bryant. Dwayne Wade was born in Chicago. Kobe Bryant was born in a basketball family of pros in Europe, and getting to see the world from a career path that he wanted to do from birth.
Yeah.
So while Kobe didn't have many friends, let's say, because of all the constant moving, he was in a business environment where he could have everything. And Dwayne Wade had multiple siblings and not from the greatest neighborhood, let's say, in the world. So they had two different circumstances. One could have a better circumstance for success because you're born in the business field you want to be in, which was basketball for Kobe. And Dwayne Wade is like, I'm just born. I'll figure out where my rhythm's going to be.
Yeah, dude.
Both two different, totally different ends of the spectrum. Both are going to go down as the top 50 greatest people, not just players, but people in the world of basketball.
Yeah.
And they're very successful. I mean, shit, Dwayne Wade owns part of the Utah Jazz. Kobe, it's already spoken for. So
Mhm.
sad to see him leave so early, but man,
Yeah.
that dude's a champ. But that's the circumstances we have to get out of our own heads. There's no excuses. We just have to get super, super resourceful. Because in my mind, I was lucky that I had my family behind me, but I was also a dumb fuck because I did not want to take their advice. I wanted to do things abundantly my way. Now,
Yeah.
as I started to fuck things up, it started to seep in. Like all that conversations, all those pep talks, all those things. My dad would always write letters for me. He'd write letters because I wouldn't listen that much. So like he would
Oh,
literally, I'd wake up
that's a
to a
wise
fucking letter
man,
on
dude.
my desk. Yeah, and it would just be like, yeah, and it was like it opened my eyes up because I'm like, fuck, all those conversations started to seep through once I started to realize my path was not the right path of getting to my destination. Because like we know that in airplanes, like most of those flights that go from like, let's say LA to New York,
Yeah.
they are not going on the original path plan that they wanted to land in New York. They're going to be going zigzagging through the air because of turbulence, wind, etc., delays.
Hmm.
So most flights are actually off the whole beaten path of what they expected. Same
Hmm.
thing in business. We're going to go way off the path and fuck it all up and burn out, or we're going to get advisory from people that have already been there and show you that, hey, don't worry about the straight line. That ain't happening.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos didn't start Amazon and say, I'm going to be a conglomerate in everything shopping. He
Yeah.
was like, all I want is a chunk of Barnes and Noble. I'm going to sell these books on the internet. And then his path changed along the way. But I could tell you there's massive turbulence in something that you want to build into significance. So
Yeah.
it's going to be hard along the way. But that's why my brain is wired to know that already. So it's normal when I come across like a very big stopping point. But then I also just need to know if there's a boulder in my way, do I go through it? Do I go above it? Do I go on the left? Do I go on the right? Do I go diagonal? Do I need to have somebody else to help me around it? So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking there's a problem, there's a solution to it. Find that solution, but don't fucking give up.
Yeah. Dude, I literally cannot add anything to that to make it more impactful. That is the truth, right? And well, here's the one thing I'll add is that I would imagine that as you've done this, you get better at it, right? It's like it might be a little clunky at first. The first roadblock comes and yeah, you're going to stumble pretty hard, right? But
Always.
as you learn, you progress and you get a lot better at overcoming those. And then it's like an Olympic hurdler, right? You're just flying over them and it's still probably difficult and you still hit some big ones, but not near as much as you probably did in the beginning of your journey. Amazing.
Yeah.
Got to wrap up now, but this has been amazing. You've shared some seriously timeless principles. I would encourage everyone go back and take notes here because this has been really one of the most, in a good way, and I know you'll take this the right way, but one of the more raw interviews in that you really shared some of the principles that built you, right? These are some seriously timeless.
Mm-hmm.
That's not empty words when I say that. These are timeless principles in that those can be actioned today. Usually I'll kind of like wrap up by asking my guests something to the effect of like, leave us with some action items. Like all the things that you talked about
Mm-hmm.
are action items, right? I mean, these are like things that people can apply right now. I don't care. I'll still ask you anyway. What's like one thing, if you were leaving everybody, what's one thing you would leave them with to say, if you're going to go do something today that's going to make a difference, what would you encourage them to go and do today?
I would think I would have a conversation with your future self. So who's the person you want to be right now? So if you're the guy that's making $5,000 in corporate and you have a passion to do a side hustle, like let's just say you started that side hustle right now. What what decisions do you need to make if you talk to the 5-year future you? So 5 years in the future. So I'm 43. I'm going to talk to 48-year-old me, and I have this goal to be at this stage at 48. What's that advice that dude's going to give me that's going to dictate my actions to actually get there?
Yeah.
Is he going to be proud? Is he going to be disappointed? Is he going to say, hey, you're not doing everything you can, you don't have a plan, you're disorganized, you need a mentor, you need these pieces? Like, have that conversation so that you can actually come back. Because I can tell you, like, from watching, like, I'm at the age where, like, my parents' friends are starting to get really sick, some have died. They're not sitting on their deathbed thinking, like, I wish I had more money. They're like, I wish I had more time. So
Yeah.
along that journey, I try to tell people, like, make as much money as you can so you can, like, unlock stress and free up, like, your passion for what you're doing, so there's fruits of the labor, but just so you can enjoy what you're doing along the way. For some people, it's going to be working relentlessly 24/7, and that might be an Elon Musk or a Gary Vee. Other
Yeah.
people, it's like, I want to work my face off for a long period of time, for 5-10 years, stack cash, get into passive investments, and then enjoy life vacationing with family. So just figure out what that future you wants, reverse engineer it, and then just do the actions that you need to do. And just know it's going to be extremely fucking hard along the way. But once you get past the hard, it's going to be simpler.
Awesome. Absolutely pure gold. Thank you so much, Rahul. I got nothing to add, man. This is absolute gold. Seriously. I again would encourage everybody, please go back, listen to these things. This will be one of the most helpful things you can do if you'll go back and listen to what Rahul has said and go action it today. Seriously. I can't say that enough. Everything that Rahul's involved in is going to be linked in the description to this episode. Rahul, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for having me, my friend.
Yeah, we'll see you.